Hi, guys.
Hey guys, welcome to the Pitch Black Unboxing Show. Of course, this is based on issue 6, which is the Celebrating Our Sisters issue. So it's a really an issue that we were really passionate about and really pleased about the outcome. And that essentially means all of our contributors, all of our features are fabulous sisters. And of course, we've got one of those fabulous sisters with us today, a lady called Pamela R. Haynes, who did a piece called The Diary of a Glad Black Woman. So welcome, Pamela. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a wonderful opportunity to be on your show.
Absolutely our pleasure.
It is a pleasure. I mean, Pamela, straight in. I love the title, The Diary of a Glad Black Woman. I love that.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunity to share some of my experiences of growing up in the UK as a Black woman.
Yeah. Okay. So actually, let's start there. So you grew up here in the UK. Were you born here, or did you come over from the Caribbean? So you were born here. Yeah.
Yes, I was born here.
Okay.
I was born at Forest Gate Maternity Hospital in East London, which got knocked down and are now luxury flats. And I think Newham General Hospital was built instead, and that's been around for decades now. So I'm dating myself in terms of my age. And but my parents hail from Barbados.
Okay,
and
good.
Both of them came to the UK for different reasons. They met here, and the rest, as they say, is history. I am the eldest of 5 siblings, and we grew up in Canning Town, so very much an East Ender.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And what was that early life like in the East End in Canning Town?
It was very white, which is very different in terms of its demographics now. A lot more people from Africa have moved into the area. But a typical Saturday for me would be going shopping with my mother to Rathbone Market, and you had your meat shop where you picked up your bits. You had your veg shop, and you also had your West Indian shop as well. So we still had bits and pieces that we could pick up from our culture. So it wasn't we were accustomed to eating pie and mash alongside cuckoo and saltfish and so on. So we were Bajan in Canning Town, as much as that could happen. And what I do like about it is that all the families knew each other from wherever they hailed from Dominica, Jamaica, St. Lucia, and so on. So it was at a time where if you saw other people in the street, you would say hi, because 9 times out of 10, they knew your parents. And they were like mini security officers in the community, because they would then report back and saying, I saw Pam here, I saw Pam there, and they used to look out for you. So that's very much what I can remember from my childhood. Fortunately, we got to see Barbados quite early for ourselves, and I think it's really important for us to be grounded in our heritage and to know where we came from. So I went to Barbados with my mum at 12 years old, with my sisters who were 11 and 2 years old. And it was really like a return. A lot of people are talking about Gambia being the place, calling it the return. But for me at that age, it was the return to see what Barbados was like for myself, and to connect with family who occasionally we got to speak to on the phone. So it was a case of the phone was passed around to all of us to say hi. We were encouraged. Yeah, very much. Remember the mail letters? Maybe you're too young to remember, but they were in.
Oh, you're so kind, Pamela.
You're very kind, Pamela.
We remember them.
Right. Well, we were encouraged.
For realizing that I'm 40.
Of course.
Airmail letters, sorry.
So we were encouraged to write airmail letters to family members, but to go and to see them all in the flesh, it was at a time when you had to dress up to fly. So we were all in our pretty
Oh,
dresses.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. And it was a time where everybody came up to the airport to see Ron and Brenda's children. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a time when all of these accents were flying around, these Bajan accents were flying around, sitting on a lot of verandas. I remember that, drinking Morby and
Yes.
tea with goat's milk, the classic. Come to the back of the house and see your cousin slaughter a chicken, and seeing it run around headless. I think everybody had, had that,
Yeah.
put me off meat for a hot minute.
Oh God.
So yeah, it was those kind of experiences and reconnecting with people who have now passed. So when we got to see them and they could say, "Girl, you look like your grandmother." So that was exciting as
Brilliant.
well, because we never met our grandmothers and we never met
Okay.
them.
Okay.
So to know that we resemble them and that we look like them, these very hardworking women, was a plus. And I'm glad that I got to do that at 12, because
Yeah.
flash forward many decades later, it was important for my children to see Barbados when they were
Yeah.
children as well.
Yeah.
And nobody could tell them anything about the Caribbean that they didn't already know, because they'd experienced it for
Yeah.
themselves.
Exactly.
That's
That's
brilliant.
brilliant. It really is brilliant. I mean, looking back at your article, you described an early experience being a black child, your first experience going into school. And I remember reading that when it came in and thinking, there was those experiences that we had to endure.
Yeah.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, because I was the eldest, I very much was the forerunner. I experienced loads of stuff for the first time. So, and it's interesting what sticks in your head, because I was only 5 years old at the time when that happened.
Wow.
And I remember starting school, and I remember, not really feeling connected with what was happening around me. And I do remember this dinner lady's comment when she said that my hair felt like cobwebs. And I remember the embarrassment and feeling ashamed, at 5 years old, about my hair not being like everybody else's. What I didn't say in the article was there was a time when I used to, do you remember the ponchos that we used to wear? I know they're in vogue now, but originally we had the bright colored ponchos, and I used to wear the poncho on my head to imitate long flowing hair. And there were commercials like the Timote woman who was using this shampoo, and magically her hair was long and flowing and manageable, because as you can imagine, this is the 70s and there weren't that many products out there to manage our hair. I think we had Dax and Vaseline was probably about it.
And India.
So a lot of pomades that was out there weren't really suitable for all hair types. I do remember having baths, and my dad would then wash our hair one by one. There was 5 of us, so one by one we got our hair done. And then even the hair dryers weren't suitable. There was one setting, hot and hotter. That was about it. And
Wow. Yes.
you could easily get burnt, from the heat from these hair dryers. And then we were like a production line, one after the other, sitting to get their hair cornrowed. And there were some styles that we didn't like to have to go to school, because we didn't want to be bullied as a result of them and the mickey taken out of us. So there was that trauma as well. But if you were the last person to get your hair done, the shrinkage, your hair was almost on the scalp. And it would be the combing. My mum's frustrated now because that's the 5th child that she's doing, and she's combing out this really dry hair. And so a lot of trauma and stress came around hair washing day, and getting your hair and managing your hair. So I do believe those experiences, though, was preparing me for a teacher, preparing me for challenges that I would have in education later on, all around my hair. Apparently, it was Afrocentric, and my locks will stop me from progressing within my organization. And people were advising me to go for a more Eurocentric look. And I was adamant, either I'm promoted on the skills that I have or not. But I was not going to compromise when it came to my hair. I mean, just a quick story. My son started school and he had a high top, closely shaven on the side. Day one, the school rang me to say that his the high top needed to go, the Mohican that he had needed to go. And I quickly referenced the fact that on the day that I told my child to go into school and he has got um, um, gravity defying hair that stands up. NASA are looking into black hair because our hair grows up. And on that day, you choose to call me to tell me that my son's hair isn't good enough. So I'm very much an advocate on um, why some people or some institutions want to police black hair.
Yeah.
And I'm just not having it. And I think the school quickly realized they had other battles to fight, like the
Exactly.
pandemic, like teaching our children, like some of the gang things that can happen when you're wearing a different uniform and so on. They had other challenges that they need to fight, and not our hair really. So I'm very much
Absolutely.
an advocate for supporting parents who have those kind of discussions in school. I have to show up as myself, and as far as I'm
Absolutely.
concerned, me
100%.
showing up with my locks and my African prints and everything else as well, because it's all part of me.
Pamela, can I just ask you? You talked about your son on his first day of school. Was this his first day of high school?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And he looked so smart that day. And we were pouring affirmations and prayers into him and wishing him all the best. And we know that there are issues when our young black boys leave primary school and go into secondary school. I have been a parent governor for some time, and I
Okay.
encourage people who are on this, who are listening to this recording, that they become involved in
Absolutely.
schools as well, because a lot of prejudice, microaggressions, and racism happens within our educational system as well. And we more or less have to combat it. We have to encourage our young people to have activities outside of school and experiences outside of school as well. So my son always complains, we always go to Barbados, Barbados, Barbados. We don't go anywhere else. And I'm just thinking, there are some children in your classroom who do not have passports
Absolutely.
yet. So, the fact that you have been traveling backwards and forwards from 9 months old is an advantage, really.
Absolutely.
So,
It gives the
So it
children
happened
such
at
a
secondary
grounding.
school.
Yeah, because you mentioned about there's other things to focus on, and and you mentioned the pandemic. So I was thinking, wow, so that's just the other day. That's just the other day, and these things are still happening.
Yeah, he's in year 11 now, so he's about to take his exams.
Okay.
And there have been issues around schools and hair and policing black hair, isolating students for having cornrows, etc. And I'm just not having it. There are other battles to fight, and we need to be getting on with those.
And this is in London?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow. That's surprising. I kind of thought that London schools would have moved forward on this, because there's so many of us in London, and it's a common thing now, isn't it? High tops and cane rows and stuff. Wow.
Oh yeah, but the flip side to that is that they're not. If you're going to have school rules, then they should be applied across the board, not singling out one section over the other. So
Mm.
for European children and British children, they have this kind of grunge look where the fringe grows very, very long, it covers
Mm.
their eyes and so on,
Mm.
also presenting a health and safety risk in science classes. I'm thinking
Mm.
in particular chemistry, yet
Mm.
they are not policed in the same way. So
Mm.
I'm not averse to school rules. I love school uniform, for example. You wake up in the morning, you know exactly what you're going to be wearing for the day.
Yeah.
But what
Mm.
I object to is it is not applied across the board,
Mm.
and it discriminates against
Mm.
one group over another.
Mhm.
And I've heard of exclusions and all sorts for some children who want to wear their hair in a particular way,
Mm.
and wear their natural hair in a particular way.
It's
So that
madness.
makes it even worse because there's nothing you can do when it grows out of your scalp. I do
Mm.
remember
Yeah.
my nephew having a part, and they were asking, well, can you get his hair cut in a particular way to grow out? Well, there's nothing you can do once you have a line in your hair. You have to wait for it to grow out. So there's this ignorance as well
Mm.
about
Mm.
black hair, and I think that we have been here long enough.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I'm first generation British. I have, between us, we have 5 children who are second generation, and now we have 6 grandchildren who are also
Mm.
third generation.
Mm.
And you're
Mm.
still running this line about,
Right.
trying to police and to control our bodies. And I'm just not for it, not here
Yeah.
for it.
That's why I asked when this happened. And yeah, like Colin says, it being in London was
Mm.
like
Surprising.
yeah, surprising.
Okay.
'Cause, yeah. Mm.
So,
Mm.
after your school experiences, you moved into the probation service, I believe.
Yeah, well, in my very first job when I left school, I really thought that I would be one of Maggie's millions. So again, I'm dating myself, her and her YTS schemes. I turned up
Mm.
to the job centre looking for work, and I almost came out disappointed until my sister spotted a card. Do you remember the cards that used to be
Yes.
on the wall
Yeah.
thingies? And a new government organisation was starting. Um, and I had the qualifications, I had the O levels to apply,
Mm.
and it was for Her Majesty's Crown Prosecution Service, a brand new
Fantastic.
government organisation. Prior
Mm.
to that, the police used to prosecute their own cases, but they needed a
Mm.
more independent body
Yeah,
to
makes
do
sense.
that. So I joined as an administrative officer. So I used to prepare the cases for trial.
Okay.
I got the opportunity to visit most of the magistrates' courts in North East London, but was mainly based at, well, it's not there anymore. It was called, it's called Stratford Magistrates Court now,
Oh,
Mm.
yes, yes.
and Redbridge Magistrates Court. So I was one
Mhm.
of the first Black women to, when you see the solicitors in court and they've always got somebody behind them who is taking copious
Mm.
notes, or in my, drawing pictures and sketching other things. But I was that person that was sitting
Oh, brilliant.
behind them. And at Crown Court, I was a law clerk. So I would write briefs for barristers. And again, when they turned around and asked for evidence, I'd be the one who was handing over evidence to
Brilliant.
the
Mm.
prosecuting barrister. So I'm one of the few Black women that worked in that role there as well, which
Mm.
I would love to say was um, a wonderful experience, but it wasn't
Mm.
always. This is now the
Mm.
80s. So we've had several uprisings in Brixton and Tottenham and so forth.
Mm.
And sometimes Black people attending court saw me very much as uh,
Mm.
The
dear,
enemy.
for want of a better word, yeah, the enemy. Yes, it's probably
Mm.
a better word. I was called worse.
Mm.
Mm.
I was spat at as well in court
Mm.
for doing the job that I did. But what I did notice at Crown Court is that it was like a revolving door for some people. So they'd come into court, they'd be sentenced, they maybe get 12 months, out in 6, and then they're back in court again. So this revolving door of predominantly young Black men. And I quickly found out that I was part of the problem and not part of the solution. But because I got to see different criminal justice agencies at court, one of them was the probation service. And there was something about what they wrote in their pre-sentence reports, which I think were called social inquiry reports back then, that made the judge consider an alternative to custody. So I wanted to be that influential. So the very next post that came up, I literally walked across Romford Road. The CPS was number 1 to number 9 Romford Road, and I joined the probation service, which is number 20 Romford Road. So literally crossed over the road. And there was at least one offender that noticed. He was in and out of court all the time. And he came in one day and he saw me working for probation. He said, "But how does that work? 1 minute you were over there, sir, and now you're over here, sir." So, and I really felt I was attached to the youth justice team, and I really felt that I was making headways. I used to write to prisoners who were incarcerated, send them Christmas cards, and just be that person where a lot of them didn't have family. To support them through their sentence. That's what I did. And what I really liked about that is that years later, when I met a young person who said to me, "You don't remember me, but that year, the Christmas card you sent me was the only Christmas card that I got from anybody." And he used to just study it and look at it and look at the pictures and what I had read inside and so on. And that meant a lot to me, that I had helped to affect change and to support someone the way that I wanted to. So I got the opportunity to go to Kingston University and get my diploma in social work, because that was the qualification that you needed to become a probation officer. And I graduated in the year 1998. I enjoyed studying so much, I stayed on for an additional year to top up my qualification to a degree in criminal justice, and came back as the real McCoy as a probation officer, and enjoyed a career in the probation service spanning 30 years.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
And at some point you retired, and you discovered or rediscovered, I don't know which it is, a love for writing, and your first book, Loving the Brothers, came out. Tell us about that transition.